Welcome everyone to another Blue Bear Quilts YouTube video. I'm Reed Johnson from Blue Bear Quilts, and today I'm going to show you how to make Coco around the world. This quilt looks a little bit complicated, but it's really not. Organization is the key to this quilt, and I'm going to show you how to be organized. This quilt is made by sewing strips together and then cutting the strips apart. So let's get started. So when you want to make a strip quilt, I'm going to show you 4 different ways to do it. The first way is with what's commonly called a jelly roll, which is 2.5-inch strips that have already been cut out for you. That's the easiest method. The next method I'm going to show you is where we use a regular straight edge ruler. This one is a 24 by 6-inch ruler, and it also has a little lip on the end that grips the mat. This is called the Olipa lip edge ruler. The third method that I'm going to demonstrate will be the Stripology Ruler. This ruler is awesome, and it has lines where you can cut every 1/2 inch. And so it makes cutting 2.5-inch and 1.5-inch strips go very quickly and very efficiently. And the last method I'm going to show you is with a die cutting system like Accuquilt, and with the various dies. This one happens to be a 1.5-inch strip die, and so that will be the die that I will be using to demonstrate how you can cut strips with a die cutter. So I've shown you that you can buy the strips already cut, 2.5-inch strips, called a jelly roll, or just a 2.5-inch strip roll. Now method number 2 is where we're going to use the Olipa lip edge ruler. You notice that it has the little lip here, which is going to grip the edge of the cutting mat. So we take our fabric like this. This is how it comes off the bolt. The fold is down here. There's the top, and we're going to take and line up the fold with the edge of the selvage like that. And you'll notice over here that it's not exactly lined up, so we have to trim it up at first. And I am left-handed, so I'm going to be placing the ruler a little bit differently than you would be placing it, but the concept is the same. So I'm lining up the fold of the fabric with this edge down here. And then I'm going to take the ruler and line it up on here. I'm going to line it up with these lines so that I can trim that first edge. So, can't quite see it. I'll push this a little bit further. There, you can see now that the edge of the ruler is lined up with the edge of the mat. And I've got all the lines ruled up, all the lines on the ruler lined up with all the lines on the mat. And then I'm going to make a first cut, which will trim that right edge off. This is waste, get rid of it. So then we're going to look for the 2.5-inch line. So 1, 2.5-inch line, and we're going to line that up with the right edge of our fabric. So we're going to put that 2.5-inch line right there along the edge. So see, the 2.5-inch line is right along there like that. And we're going to take and make our next cut. There's one 2.5-inch strip cut, and it's cut the whole width of the fabric. So see, when we open it up, it's one big long piece. So then we just take and slide our ruler over, and again we line up that 2.5-inch line with the edge of our fabric. And it basically, because this is a real accurate mat, we're able to line up the ruler with the lines on the mat, and we make our next cut. So that's how you do it with a regular straight edge ruler. Now method number 3 is where we're going to use the Stripology squared ruler. And so I'm going to leave the fabric right where it's at. I may have to slide, I'm going to slide the mat just a little bit so that you can see it better. Okay, and then I'm going to take and lay this ruler on top of the fabric. And you'll notice down here that there are stars and squares, and over here is the guide to that. So the squares are 2.5 inch cuts. So you make your first cut here, 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 here. That gives you 2.5. And if you want to make 1.5 inch cuts, you follow the stars. So you would cut here, here. And there are little notches in this ruler and lines that go all the way along here. So your rotary cutter is going to ride right in those lines. So I'm going to take and place this white line on the edge of the ruler along the fold of my fabric. And since we're making 2.5 inch cuts, we're going to be using the square. And so the square is right there. So there's reference marks down here. So basically I can line up those reference marks with a line. And then up above, I want to make sure that these notches are all on the lines. And I can see that they are. We're lined up along here at the bottom. We're lined up with the right edge of our fabric. So now in order to use this particular rotary cutter, I need to make sure that I have more of the blade showing so I can slide that up. You've got to be very careful when it's like the rotary cutters like this so that you don't cut yourself. So this cut is already made. The first square is already made. So we're going to move to the second square, which is at the 10-inch denomination. And we're going to just put the rotary cutter right in that groove and slide right along that. And there we've made a cut. Then we're going to move up to the next one, which is right here at the 7.5. Stick our rotary cutter in there, slide it, and we've made another cut. We're going to move up to the 5-inch and make another cut. So there's actually 2 more cuts that we can make on here. So you can see how quickly and easily I am able to get 2.5 inch strips by using that Stripology ruler. So the next method that I'm going to show you is how to cut strips with the Accuquilt cutter, and we're going to be cutting 1.5 inch strips for that. So let me get that set up and I'll be right back with you. So now the fourth method is cutting with an Accuquilt cutter and a die. So this is the 1.5 inch strip die. And I'm sorry that I can't really get the camera up higher to show you more of the cutter. But basically, you take and you lay the fabric straight along the die like this. Smooth it out nice and straight. And then you take and you place a mat on top of the cutter like this. But I've already cut out what I need for this, so I'm just going to be demonstrating on a little strip instead of a bigger piece of fabric. So this is a 2.5 inch strip that we're going to turn it into a 1.5 inch strip. So we're going to lay it along the line here and make sure that it's within the lines along here. So we're definitely getting it within a line there and a line there. See, the way these dies work is they're actually metal blades inside here. And if I were to push down really hard on that line, I would cut my finger. So what happens is we lay the fabric on top of the die, and then we lay a plastic cutting mat on top of the fabric and the die. And then as it goes through the machine, this is the Go Big Cutter, it's an electric one. I'm going to run it through the machine now, and as it does it, there's a roller inside here that pushes down on top of the mat and the fabric and the die, and it cuts the fabric. So here we go, I'm going to push it through. It goes all by itself. You can see my hands are free. done, we like to give it a little love to release any static electricity and slide it off the die. And here is our perfectly cut out 1.5 inch strip. So those are your 4 methods for how you can cut out strips to make your Coco Around the World quilt. So now that we have all of our strips cut, we need to sew them together. And you're going to want to use a 1/4 inch foot. So on my machine, there is a little line that's right here that you line up the edge of the fabric with. That line goes back here, it goes back here, and it says 1/4 inch. So I'm going to take and line up the 2 strips that I've placed right sides together. And I'm going to line them up with those lines. Just start stitching, and then you have to make sure that your strips are lined up as you go. You don't really have to look at the needle. You can just look at like these lines that are on your machine, because you know that if that's lined up correctly, as it gets close to the needle, it'll still be lined up properly. And you just sew along the entire length of the strip. And you just keep sewing until you get to the very end of the strip. Then when you get ready to press these, we'll press towards the dark for now. But as you actually start sewing these units together, you probably will have to repress. But for now, it's easiest to just press to the dark. And then you take and you add the next strip. So if the next strip in the order of the sequence is blue, you take and you line up your blue like this. And then start sewing these strips together. And you just keep adding the strips until you've got all the strips that are needed for a unit. So now that we have our strips all sewn together, we're going to lay them out on our mat. And this particular strip set, because it has this large strip that's 4.5 inches, is going to be cut at 4.5 inches. So we're going to start off over here and trim off the selvage edges. And we've got the top strip lined up on a line on a ruler, and we have the bottom one lined up with a line. We're going to trim this up on this side. And again, I'm doing this left-handed. Now we're going to take our Olipa 24 by 6 inch ruler, or actually this is a 5 inch ruler. And we're going to put the 4.5 inch line right here on the right edge. Get it all nice and lined up. And cut. So there's one of our subsections. We're going to do that again. Put the 4.5 inch right on the edge of the right edge where we cut. And the lines of the ruler line up nicely with the lines on the mat. And we cut another 4.5 inch section. I'll do it one more time. Line it up with the right edge. And this ruler is nice because it has a lip on it that grabs the edge of the mat. And you can shove it right up against there and it holds it in place nice and firmly. Get all those lined up there, lined up on the bottom here. And remember the rule, it's always better to measure twice and cut once. I've made that mistake a couple times on this quilt already. So for this particular one, we need 6 subcuts. So I'm going to keep cutting, and I'll be back with you soon. So now when we're cutting our subcuts that need to be 2.5 inches, because these strips are all 2.5 inches, so the subcuts are going to be 2.5 inches, we can use our Stripology squared ruler again. So this time we're going to line up one of these horizontal lines with the bottom of the fabric strip. And also make sure that it's lined up at the top. And then again, the 2.5 inches are the square markers. So we're going to start with this one over here. We'll place our rotary cutter in the keyhole and make that first cut. And then we move over to the next square, which is right here at the 10-inch. And again, put the blade of the rotary cutter in the keyhole and cut. There we go. We have our perfect subcut 2.5-inch unit. So you can either cut with the Stripology squared ruler, or you can use your regular straight edge ruler to make your subsets. Now that we have the strip sets all cut out, we need to put them in piles and label them with their unit number, because in the pattern there is a grid that tells you the order that these pieces are to be laid out. And so there is my first quadrant of the quilt that I'm starting to sew together. And here are the pieces as they've been laid out in the order that they need to be laid out to be sewn together. And there's a grid in the pattern that tells you the order that those pieces should be laid out.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
So we sew all of the units together in big long columns so it becomes one big long strip like this. And on the back, the strips all have to be pressed one particular direction. They all need to be going in one direction. You notice now that that one's going up and this one's going down. We want to change that. So we want all of these seams to go up. So you basically just take your iron and run it along the column like this. And you need a nice hot iron. And you'll notice how it's just making all of the seams lay in that particular direction. In this case, they're all facing towards the top of the column. So we move it down and we do it again. Just nice, run your iron along the column. Get all those seams going in one direction. You just keep doing it for the whole column. And the reason we do this is that we want the seams to nest together. So this is one column, and here's the column that goes next to it. So you'll notice that when I flip this one on top, all of these seams are going down, and on the one that we just did, they're all going up. So what happens is when you put this seam right next to that one, the two nest together and you can actually feel it with your finger, and then they line up perfectly. So see how that one is headed down and this one over here is headed up? They nest right next to each other, and that will happen the whole way down the column, which makes it so easy to sew together. So by pressing the seams in opposite directions for each row, the seams all nest together, and this is what it looks like when the blocks are all nicely nested together from the back. After you have sewn your rows together, your columns together, into 4 quadrants, you lay out the 4 quadrants like so. Then you're going to sew these pieces together, either by putting the 2 top pieces together and forming a row, a top row and a bottom row, or putting the top and bottom pieces in 1 column together and then sewing the 2 columns together. Wow, we did it! We made the Coco Around the World quilt. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. If you'd like to make your own Coco Around the World quilt, you can find the pattern at our website, www.bluebearquilts.com. If you'd like to find the fabric to make this quilt or another project, the fabric is called Coco Chic. It's our very first fabric line with QT Fabrics. That's short for Quilting Treasures. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Send us some love, send us some comments. We'd love to hear from you. And please remember to subscribe to our channel. We look forward to seeing you next time on another YouTube video from Blue Bear Quilts. Bye-bye.